Prepti here. So at the last meeting we had, we ended with number 20, so we have left off on number 21. We'll go through the list and then we'll come back to address what we needed to wrap up, if that sounds good to everybody. All right. So number 21 is legislation concerning appropriation of funds.
So the idea behind this suggestion or consideration is, well, one, there's some just kind of cleanup here because subsection 3 really only applies to capital spending plans. It's my understanding when this rule was first created, the idea was that the capital spending plan would not be filed during the pendency of the budget process. But the way it's written, it applies in broader scope than just capital spending plans. It applies to any legislation that seeks to appropriate funds or is a kind of a debt obligation. So where it has come up in the past as being a little bit problematic is, you'll recall we've done tax anticipation notes in conjunction with the budget. They have to be filed when the budget is filed, but according to this rule, we would have to suspend the rules in order to hear the tax anticipation notes because they are technically a debt obligation. And so the idea is that and these changes don't necessarily reflect what I'm saying right now, some of them do, but that we would have this rule only apply to capital spending plans when they, during the budget process.
Okay.
So that they would not be filed during the budget process, and then once they are filed, there's that one meeting deferral to give time for consideration.
Got it. Okay. Vice Mayor, would you like a copy?
Yes, thank you for reference. I have it on my phone. Pardon me. Thank you, ma'am.
That all makes sense to me. Does anyone have any comments? Okay. All right, then we're good to go on that one. And you're just finishing up the language.
Yeah, it'll need a couple more tweaks from what we have in there right now.
Okay, that sounds great. Number 22 has no changes. Number 23, confirmations and questionnaire. This is housekeeping. And I'm saying housekeeping, but if you guys have comments on these, feel free to chime in.
I have a quick question on 23, and if it's not something we need to get into, but it's something I'm just curious about, and it's a little different from writing the rules, but like last meeting we had copies of their reports, which it does talk about on here, their questionnaires, and one of the things on the questionnaire says, have you filed an ethical disclosure or ethical something? Mm-hmm. And I'm wondering, and like some of the ones we had said yes, and some of the ones we had said no. Why? Like, is that something they're required to do?
I'm not sure what it says on the questionnaire to be able to answer that question.
I would say part of that could be if they're reappointments, and they probably have been required to submit an ethical. I think that they're required to, if you serve on a board or commission, you submit like the same benefit disclosure that you all submit. But if somebody's new, they wouldn't have submitted one before. I think that might be part of it. It may not always be.
And I'm not sure if boards and commissions are actually doing that, because I served on the Traffic and Parking Commission, but maybe I didn't do it because I was
You were
council.
required to, right?
Okay, but I don't know if colleagues did either.
Yeah, and I actually don't know, I guess.
I don't know the answer to the question, but we can look at the questionnaire, and the contents of the questionnaire are something that the Rules Committee can determine later. They don't have to be determined in these rules.
And for background, we will be discussing the questionnaire because there are some updates that need to be done on it. And the process in general, I know in the past that we have, voted to approve certain nominees just based off of are they qualified to serve because they live in the county. And I think that we need to be doing more than that. So I want to have a discussion with us and the Human Relations Commission, and I've already talked to Ashley over at the commission for, after all of this is done, to start discussing boards and commissions and the questionnaire itself.
Is there any requirement or criteria for a questionnaire that we can we establish our own questionnaire for people on boards?
Yeah, according to the rules, you can do that.
Because I agree. Just because they live in Davidson County, now everybody asks pretty good questions to us, not very penetrating questions. But it'd be nice to have like 4 or 5 minimum things that they have to report out. But I agree with you.
Yeah, maybe it's not so much as reporting out, but as a, we as a body said we wanted specific representation on these boards and commissions, right? After receiving our diversity study, we want more veterans, we want people with specific knowledge and background to serve on certain boards and commissions.
Yeah,
and I think it's important that we push for that, and hopefully we have a good partner in the mayor's office. I don't know who will be in charge of that at this point, or if it's still the same person. So we could work hand in hand to make that happen, but also now we have a larger number of appointments that the council body is doing itself. And so I think we need to have a better conversation about this in general.
Even a question that just says what makes you qualified to serve on this board.
Yeah.
Something that's straightforward, in a couple paragraphs, summarize your skill and ability.
Yeah.
Add a value.
I agree. All right, moving on to number 25, agenda preparation and mailing. That is housekeeping.
Wait, is that 25 or 24?
24.
Okay.
Sorry.
So I was just wondering if I got it wrong.
I just wanted to trick you.
Who's paying attention?
Who's on first?
Yeah.
Number 25 is facility use and access. There are no changes there.
I do have a question about this one.
Yes.
So, the second part where it's talking about like materials on our desks, right? I'm just making sure that maybe distributed or placed on council members' desks if, and then it's got 3 things and it's got or, so it only has to meet one of those criteria. In other words, anything that is mailed to us will be placed on our desk. Like the third thing is, it comes by mail or other delivery service. So if it's mailed to us, it doesn't have to have anybody's signature. Is that accurate?
Yeah. All right, anything else on 25? All right, 26 is restriction on access to council chambers and committee rooms. This does have changes.
Yeah, so this one, there are some housekeeping changes in there, but the last sentence is a proposal that the members of the media must display appropriate, identifying credentials while they're on the floor of the room.
I agree.
And that, could be something that they've received, something from their media organization.
Or maybe it's something that we actually supply so that it is uniform across the board so that we know what that looks like. Because I know there's sometimes if I want to go talk to whoever's in the administration table and Cassandra Stevenson is sitting there. Well, if I don't know who Cassandra Stevenson is, I'm having a conversation that media is listening to that I may not want that. But if she's got a big, I don't want it to be some huge sign, but something that we know what it is, that in that way they also have to come and say, hey, I'm Courtney Johnston from News Channel 5, and here's my credentials there. Okay, then you get a council pass that says, or whatever.
And it is good that they wear it so that we are aware of who.
Right, but I mean, sometimes their credentials don't look a whole lot different than maybe ours, and sometimes they're sitting, it's not necessarily, like I feel like it needs to be on a lanyard where it's all, even if they're sitting down, because like I'll wear mine here. If they're wearing theirs here and I'm sitting down, you can't see this. But if I have it on a lanyard, I don't know, just.
Yeah, the idea is just to make it clear, have some sort of identifying insignia that you are part of the media and you should be on the floor. We have been talking with the clerk's office, and they were doing kind of a survey of some other places to see what type of credentialing is required to attend, meetings when if it's a, media event or something. And so they haven't been able to find places where, like the state legislature doesn't require it. They do have a little press area. Eventually maybe we want to this is a conversation for another day, but have a location for the press to sit so that, you know, if you want to be a member of the media and have a special spot and plug in and all that kind of stuff, you have a special area.
Yeah, I think that's appropriate too. I don't think it's appropriate, to be honest with you, to have media at the administration table or in that area. There's,
Well, I don't think we could fit a whole lot of people. We need to rework the room in general.
well, right, but regardless, I think it's inappropriate to have media in that specific place.
Vice Mayor, you had a comment?
I think what I wanted to remind us is that when I have been sitting on the back row in district service, a lot of the coming and going of the camera crews and the various folks, and absolutely there are folks that you are known, Ms. Luxon from Channel 5, but as far as like the camera crew, and then I will say there's so much, sadly, volatility in local news and the coverage, and so I would caution us, I guess. I think, I would just presume every member of the press has a press credential. And so I think just requiring that it be visible, you know, as provided to you by your organization. Because, I mean, there could be some touch point with the clerk, but if you can imagine a guy who's with the supporting camera crew and he's new or he's different the next time, or it's not that reporter this time, they're sending somebody else, and then if the meeting's already in progress, then there's nobody representing the clerk at that desk. And I just think requiring us to provide that creates a pretty big challenge, especially with just sort of the churn, sadly, in local media. So.
I mean, it would be something that they would have to come every time and grab it. I would think, and not just like, here's your press pass for, you know, so if you are, it doesn't matter if you're new or not, you have to, but if that's too much of a deal, I just still think that having them in a specific area is appropriate, but not at the planning desk and not at the administration desk. I don't know where they need to be. I mean, obviously we're sort of, but it's just inappropriate for media to be in that area where there are conversations that are happening that media does not need to be privy to. No, it's not a not transparent thing. It's just sometimes things can be taken out of context because you don't know what me and, I say Mike Jameson, there is no, but you know, when I'm talking to him or I'm talking to two of you, like we've got something, but if somebody else hears it and it's out of context and, oh, well, I heard Council Lady Johnson say, and it's like, you don't even know what you're talking about. Like that's just not appropriate.
I appreciate that. There's nobody staffed at the clerk's desk during a meeting though, right? There's nobody there.
Close it.
So I guess, I mean, it's just sort of the staffing issue. I concur with you, like if you just checked in, right, much like as we get the parking pass or you pick up your agenda, you could, you know, say your credentialed press and show it and they can provide something to you. But there's literally not a staff member there once the meeting's underway. And very often, I will say in my own experience, they are coming to shoot some footage or
For a little bit, and then-
particular vote.
Yeah.
Or a little vote, and so sometimes they didn't even show up till halfway in the meeting, 'cause
Right.
something on third reading was contentious or second, so that, like, they weren't there at the start of the meeting.
Sure.
Ms. Stevenson is, because she's following the whole meeting, so, yeah.
Well, we can't do anything about the placement at the moment if we can't fit in the chambers, right? Unless you guys shift it. I will say that myself and Councilmember Rutherford have the worst seats in the House.
Yeah, absolutely, the podium,
Because
for sure.
we turn around and we're straight facing and we're in the way of the camera, and then you lock eyes with the person speaking, and that's just awkward. But I don't think that we can restrict them at where they're at unless you all have any suggestions.
Why not? Why couldn't they be
On the other side?
behind us, like if you're looking at the podium on this little side here and have that area restricted? Now, I know there's sometimes where they want their cameras.
Well, that's
That's
the
really
thing, they
only-
can't see you.
Right, but that's what I'm saying. So if there's cameras that they're wanting to actually do, but like for Cassandra, she never has a camera to the sand. So she could follow that meeting just as easily back there and not be taking up that real estate and being privy to certain things that don't need to be privy to. But then where there is media that's coming in and maybe they just want to be back there and see it. If they want to come, when they're on the side, we never have them there the entire meeting. Ever, never. It's always like Vice Mayor's saying, which is it's one specific vote, wherever it is in the agenda, they come, and then they leave. So that to me is not as bothersome as just having someone, I don't know, it's,
Well, let's go back to the press passes, right, and make a decision on that. I think
Like
it's,
visible press passes.
Yeah,
is
just-
Visible, yeah,
just
for
bring
at
a
the very
visible
least.
press pass, and we'll leave it at that. And then I guess as far as the location would be a further discussion with you, Vice Mayor.
Yeah, I think so,
And
just,
I think that, one of the, because I totally agree with you. I've been sitting in council meetings forever, and I have always hated having the press on that wall right there. That little area back to the right of the podium from the perspective of the floor, it would be nice, and it's something that I want to look into, and that is having some desks with some, inputs so that you can plug your computer in and you can sit there and take your notes and do all that kind of stuff from that area if you need it. There are places in the back of the room I've discovered recently where media can go plug into the audio feed so that they can get good audio and not just, record in the room.
Yeah, right.
So, yeah.
Do they know that?
Yeah,
think so.
yeah.
They
people
know,
are-
okay.
Plug in.
Yeah,
It's
people
like
are back
under
there.
the
Is
plugging
that a
coat rack,
secret?
Yeah,
Under
Okay.
the random coat rack.
Yeah.
The coat rack of random coats.
yeah.
It's been there for as long as I've been serving, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So-
Go against the wall, yes. Okay, so we're good on 26. Any other comments? All right, number 27 is housekeeping. Number 28 is public addressing council.
I've got about 4 things here.
Okay. Let's go with Director Darby and then we'll get into it.
It's kind of just some clarifying language in here to add in when, the public hearing is not otherwise required by law. And it's really just some clarifying language.
Okay. Councilmember Cash.
Okay, so I got 4 things. I don't think anything's major, but let me ask about them and see if we can word them better. In the second paragraph that's short, I don't like the words regarding each matter, and I see that the word matter is referred to in the first sentence. I guess 2 things. I just feel like the word matter is vague, and I wonder if there's allowed to speak for 2 minutes regarding each matter. Does that mean that they could get up and speak for 2 minutes on every piece of legislation or 5 different pieces of legislation?
I think it could potentially be removed completely and just put the period after minutes.
Okay.
Alright, let's do that.
Yep.
Yeah, let's do that.
In the next paragraph, about 4 lines down, where it says, upon approval, or this is the 3rd line near the end, upon approval of a council member's motion by 2/3 vote of the council. Should there be an and in there? Member's motion and by 2/3 vote of the council? Does that make sense? Seems like with the by there, it just runs. There should be a motion and a vote, right?
Yeah.
It feels like there should be an and in there after the word motion.
No, cause it's saying the
You're voting on
approval of the motion.
Yeah, you're
Yeah.
voting on,
Yeah.
yeah.
It's not the motion
Oh.
itself,
it's
it's the approval.
cumbersome, but
Yeah.
Oh, I see.
Does that make
Okay, I
sense?
see it.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, back up to the second line of that paragraph. Members of the public may address the council in a public hearing format. Is the word format necessary? Like public hearing? It just feels awkward.
I think because we have, we have a public comment period and a public hearing. And so those are 2 separate types of, formats within which you address the council.
Okay. And the last thing is the word, this is just kind of a question to make sure that there aren't instances where this word might cause problems. The last sentence of that 3rd paragraph, such motion, this is, to, I guess, add a additional public hearing on something, right? So, such motion shall specify the subsequent meeting at which the public hearing is to take place, and I get that that's almost always gonna be the case. but I wonder if there's any instance where subsequent ties our hands.
Well, because you can't call, sorry.
Councilmember Jones.
I don't think you can call a public hearing on the same night, cause
What do
you would have to, you would have to notice it, you know what I mean?
I kinda do. I do know what you mean, and that's why I'm like just making sure. For example, there was a public hearing that we had scheduled for a specific time, and then there was a motion to change that public hearing and add time to it. Would that just be different from this, cause the public hearing
Weren't
is
the
already
rules
scheduled?
suspended on that one too?
I think the rules might have been suspended.
Okay,
I think
okay.
that's a little bit different. So I will say to this specific subsequent meeting was added to the rules last term in order to make sure that, I think that the concern was if we're calling a public hearing the same night, people don't have notice of it. So if you call a public hearing for a subsequent meeting, it gives the public the ability, so that's kind of
That makes sense.
that's kind of gonna be the, I guess, like, standard form is to set it for a subsequent meeting.
I totally get that and agree, I just wondered if there were any sort of instance where that word subsequent would cause problems. But,
Yeah, because subsequent means next, right? So,
well,
but then we
Yeah.
ran,
Yeah,
It doesn't mean next.
it
like,
could mean,
it's just
It
a
could-
future.
In the
Later.
future.
In the future, so it doesn't mean the immediately subsequent meeting, and is that what you're saying, Councilman Cash, that it's insufficiently specific? Do you think people could confuse that it does mean the immediately subsequent, or
no, I
a
was,
subsequent instead of the, or a subsequent?
I
That's
like
all?
that, I like that, yeah.
Okay.
I just wondered if there was any,
a subsequent meeting.
like if we accidentally did away with a public hearing and then it's like, oh, no, wait, we do need to have that, you know what I mean? Also, one last thing, I'm sorry. The vice mayor in the past has always, or whoever's presiding has always said you have to state your address. Is that just, I don't see that in here, is that a rule?
That is, it is not a rule,
Okay.
but
You're supposed to be from Davidson County to address us, correct?
I don't think that you need to be from Davidson County to address either. It's to give the body,
Information.
the information so that you can judge the credibility of what somebody is saying.
Yeah.
Because
I
we
just
do
didn't know if
have
we-
developers representing a firm or whatnot.
So if you're from, Wilson County and you're in here talking about something happening in Bellevue, a zoning matter, then, you can talk about it, but when you're listening to that person, you might think, I don't know what is your nexus? Like, what do you?
Purpose.
Yeah,
Are we sure
I
that
totally get
that's-
that.
Do it.
I thought that was always a rule that to address us, you either have to be a Davidson County resident or be representing, like, cause I get developers have lawyers that are from God only knows.
We had a rule about public comment that required you to be a Davidson County resident. This was back when we had made our own public comment period, but
Oh.
we took that out with this Rule 28 amendment at the end of the term. Cause the state law doesn't,
Well, I don't
say.
wanna limit people that way either, because there are people that work in Davidson County that it might affect them, but they're priced out and have to move outside of the county. That's why I like them stating it and us figuring out if it's credible or not.
Yeah.
I guess,
Alright,
Yeah.
Vice Mayor was first.
Well, I know that this has come up before because I've personally noticed that women are less inclined to give their address, and I do think some members of the community have, we as elected officials, our address is everywhere. It is, I think, to Margaret, or Director Darby's point, is this person commenting on this zoning matter? And if you were to look up their address, they're 8 miles away, so maybe the points they're making are not relevant to this particular matter. I think that's the intent. But I'm interested to think a little bit more about, whether it be the council district in which you reside, the neighborhood, I think people have some trepidation. I mean, everything is so public now, we all know from looking at the parcel viewer or whatever, but, I still sense some reticence, more so among women, to just give their street address. So it's just something in the back of my mind that I think some people have concern about. So I'm not suggesting a change, but I just wanted to kind of speak that into the room, because I feel like it's been a little bit of a concern.
Councilmember Cash.
I'm not really concerned whether and not asking whether, about the rule, whether he needs to be somebody in Davidson County or outside Davidson County. I'm just wondering if we want to require them to give their address or some sort of address, if it needs to be in the rules, or if it's just subject to the presiding officer's discretion. Right now, technically it's the presiding officer's discretion, right?
Councilmember.
Yes.
I agree with this. I mean, you know, this world is crazy, and there's men that don't want to give out their address, especially if they're speaking against something that maybe that a lot of people are for, or, you know, they're on the opposite side of something, and, I mean, people are crazy. So what if we do make it, well, I was gonna ask, so the state law doesn't say anything about having to identify yourself, or identify any sort of
So the state law
geography?
is related to the public comment period only. So the state law doesn't say anything about limiting it to residents, which is why we took that out. But that's for public comment, not for public hearings.
Okay, so maybe for public for public comment.
Yeah.
But does it say anything about it for public hearings?
No, I don't think so.
So public
I can't-
hearing,
it
they're
doesn't
still
come to
supposed to say
mind.
their address?
Well, it doesn't say that you have to, I don't think there's any statute or anything that says that you have to state your address, or that says that you have to be a resident of Davidson County, or, you know, the county in which you're speaking to
So
speak.
why were we always doing that? State your name and address and then
I
you have
think
2
it's-
minutes.
Well, I mean, it's been happening since I've been
it's
here, and I'm
habit.
sure it happened long before that.
I mean, it's habit that we ask people if they can vote in this county. We don't have to ask that.
And I think it goes back to just.
Well, on those boards and commissions though, you do have to be.
On specific ones,
Some of
yes.
So, okay. Sometimes I think it's important to give that context, not necessarily your address, but certainly the council district. You know, and if you don't live in the county and you still wanna speak or whatever, I'm from Wilson County, but I've got an opinion, so, okay. But at least then you know, so it gives us some sort of context, but it's not specific enough to be dangerous or create some sort of fear of privacy, you know, whatever. And I also feel like the zoning and the public hearing should be, just to not create confusion, it's like, well, this is public comment and not public hearing, and we handle that differently. It's like, let's just do it the same across the board so that nobody's confused. Just, you know what I mean?
Do what the same?
Like, if you're gonna require them to state, you know, their council district for zoning, then they should be required to state council district or county if they're outside of Davidson County for public comment as well.
Instead of asking for specific address.
Address, right.
Okay, so what if somebody shows up and they don't know their council district?
Well, we have a tool for that online.
Yes. Sure. It's easier for somebody to just give like a general area, a general street, than to go and name their council district.
Maybe. I mean,
Maybe
maybe this
let's
is a great
just
opportunity
redraw.
for them to learn what council district they are and who's representing them, if they don't know. It forces them to educate themselves. I mean, people need to get involved. We had less than 25% of our electorate involved in the most important election we'll have every 4 years. So maybe they need to know
Maybe
who's,
keeping it broad enough just to list the street you're on. That way you don't know the detail, and that way it is, protects you.
I give you Old Hickory Boulevard, which
Oh,
like.
yeah, I know.
yeah.
Well, I know, it's like, where do you keep it safe, but then relative?
And again, I just wanted to speak that in the room in this space, not because I think we should change it, but because I've had some questions about it, people asking why do we, whatever, so, yeah, I mean, at present, that is at my discretion, so I appreciate the feedback, but, I don't, is the suggestion that we should put it in the rules? Is that why we're discussing it?
Well, if it's something that's been done forever, it's to the point that we think that it's a rule, but then we learn that it's not a rule, it either needs to be put into the rules or go away. Like these random things that we do just because it's always been done, that makes no sense to me at all. If it's important enough to do it just because, then it's important enough to put it in the rules. If it's not, then we need to figure that out. And I think it is important, especially on zoning bills, but also on public hearing. Like, if you're addressing this body that is the legislative body of Davidson County, but you're in Wilson County, or you're in whatever, like, oh, noted?
I don't think we should restrict people from speaking. I think that it's fine having it as a standard, right? We will ask this of you when you come up to the mic. I think that's fine.
Yeah,
If that's okay with everybody. I don't think we should make it a requirement, but I think it should be a standard of what we ask. If we're already doing it,
That's a good point. And if someone wants to defer because of personal, then Vice Mayor has the opportunity to.
so the rule is that we ask, but they don't have to answer. Okay.
Well,
well, what are we gonna do?
So that's also, I mean, I think you do have a free speech right to stand up, and I don't know that we have, we can research the question, but I don't know that we could stop someone from speaking because they refuse to give their address in a public hearing.
Yeah, no, I mean,
And that's
I don't
kind
know
of the
that that's
complication.
ever happened, but maybe it is a rule that
Right.
we ask. What council district, or, you know, if you're outside of Davidson County,
give an
what
option.
county?
What's your address or district?
Yeah. I don't know.
Address, council district, neighborhood, county of
Where were
residence.
you on the night of
Maybe you figure it out. Ask them whatever you want. What's your favorite color?
Favorite color?
Yeah.
Favorite.
Okay, let's
All right.
move on.
Let's move. All right, number 30 is housekeeping. Number 31 is order of business, and this would be changes subsequent to rules and modifications. Anything we need to discuss there?
The change that's proffered is, housekeeping, but as noted in the comment, if we make changes to the consent agenda, rule, then we would need to come back
Okay.
at the end and kind of modify this order of business to.
And we will be going over the consent agenda a little later in this, so we'll come back to that. Number 32 is housekeeping. Number 33 is housekeeping.
I got something here.
Okay.
In other the second line, it says, upon consideration of ordinance or resolution by the council, the first person to be recognized by the vice mayor. There are other places where it says chair or
Presiding
designate,
officer.
like, should we
Have a
like,
uniform.
add chair, vice mayor or presiding
Pro tem.
officer, or, yeah, something that leaves it open to.
I think presiding officer makes
Yeah.
sense. Okay.
That's it.
Anything else?
Nope.
Okay. And then 34, you got something?
I got something on this one too, sorry. I'm kind of just curious. The clerk shall keep time, the third line, second and third lines, the clerk shall keep time in accordance with this rule. The clerk is only keeping time, is that correct? The clerk is not keeping track. The first sentence is, the council member should speak no more than once on the same subject until all council members have had an opportunity to speak on it. But then it says the clerk keeps time. Is the clerk just keeping time, or is the clerk also keeping, like, the order of speaking and determining if,
No, the clerk is just keeping the 3-minute timer going.
okay,
The person keeping track of when you speak is the vice mayor.
okay.
I've got a question on this. Has there been any previous discussion that if a member has not utilized their full 3 minutes, that they could reserve that time if another council member directly addresses them or essentially poses some kind of question or something that would merit a direct rebuttal that implicates that previously speaking council member?
There's
There's a specific rule on that in
Yeah,
there.
there's not a reservation of time. It's really more of a courtesy that if someone does specifically address you, then typically you're recognized to respond to that by the vice mayor.
Yep. I mean, typically, it's not like posing a question. I think historically, it's been if somebody like impugns you,
Yeah.
right? And then I would afford that member an opportunity to respond to that in that moment, rather than letting that, but,
What's the second
you know,
paragraph in here?
members address the chair, but, you know, I mean, you kind of pose a question to the member through the chair, which is a little bit awkward, but, I mean, we're not supposed to be addressing colleagues and asking questions in that way. That's supposed to, I mean, questions can be asked on the floor, but directed through the presiding officer.
Hopefully all that gets handled in committee.
Right, I mean.
Just
I mean,
saying.
There are valid questions on
It
the
does, but
floor,
then it gets-
absolutely.
Yeah, right.
But, yeah.
Anything else? All right, 35, we have nothing. 36,
Just one small thing,
on 35?
no, I'm 36.
Okay, hold on, let's give Director Darby, and then we'll go.
So on 36, this proposed modification is so that a motion to reconsider can be made prior to the end of the meeting rather than prior to the next order of business.
And that was my suggestion based off of what happened last term, at the end of last term. So, not saying that our vice mayor will do this, but just going forward, I think that somebody's motion should be heard and not ignored. And having it move to the end of the meeting gives us enough time for that. Councilmember Cash, you have.
I like that.
Okay.
Mine is just a grammatical thing. In the number 3, it's talking about 4 members of council. Grammatically, shouldn't that be fewer? Members of council are countable, so it seems like it should be fewer.
Yeah, not, instead of less, not fewer than.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're right.
And, wait, I gotta,
What were you, a teacher or something?
Use English.
English.
Not less than.
All right, Vice Mayor?
On 35, Ms. Darby, motion to table and motion for previous question being combined into one rule. I guess as I read it, I can see there's some combined, I mean, it occurs to me we might want to separate that just for clarity and or A, B, or 1, 2, or just, I feel like we could, combining both those, they're really handled very differently, so
Yeah,
I'm
we can
a little
separate that.
confused why they're together, but.
Wait, what?
She's saying to number 35 to separate it, A, B.
Motion to table and motion for previous question, they're kind of combined oddly because they're distinctly different motions that do have
So
some.
add a whole nother, like, that's,
The sentence or,
I mean, I
So-
think it makes sense to keep some of the numeration going, but I would just suggest kind of subsection or I don't.
I would make it a whole nother rule. I mean, if you're gonna separate it, cause they're two very different things, actually.
yeah, I think that's a good, smart thing.
Cause you
then
can't
when
just
you're-
say motions.
When you're going through this.
Motion A, motion B, you know.
Motions. One big long rule.
It's a, yeah.
But I don't know what that does to numeration.
Yeah,
I mean, like,
is
It's
that gonna throw
change,
y'all
it's
off?
gonna change all the numbers, and one of the goals that we had was to not change the
Because
numbers.
we've got these numbers memorized.
Because I'm
Well,
rule
not
43,
fully,
rule
but-
43, but
Well, let's go A, B.
We just do, yeah.
one of the things that we were
Yeah, A and B,
gonna
C.
do at the end of, for the last turn of all of this is to number all the paragraphs so that each paragraph is numbered, so we can make reference to rule 35.1 or rule 35.2.
Like they said, A and B would be good.
Whatever.
And then we can have, rule 35.1, we could have a subheading that just says motion to table,
Yeah.
Yeah.
and then motion to, for something that's very specific under there.
I would just say that as written, this is particularly cumbersome because the reason I think they are together is that, neither of these motions can be made by the last member to speak on the measure, and I think you're trying to kind of point that out. But then, provided it meets the restrictions of Rule 39, there are a whole host of motions that are before this body that would behoove the body and community members to understand by rule. And I'm interested to know, is this specified by rule because it tends to be confusing or problematic because the
it's-
last person speaking, it's just
I
weird
think it's
that
because they differ from Robert's rules.
Yes.
Okay,
And so that's why,
Okay.
especially the motion to table, I'm actually not sure that previous question is super different.
Previous question isn't very different, but
it is different, I know.
But the
because
tabling motion
the
is
tabling is
absolutely different.
definitely
Yeah,
different.
this is
Definitely,
completely
yeah.
unique to us.
As somebody who has
Yeah.
read her Robert's rules and then
Right.
was like, wait a minute.
I know.
Previous question, okay, I will,
All right, so that one will be organized.
Previous
Yeah,
motion.
Well, good luck, how do you figure that out? I mean, you got 4 motions with 3 numbers that are all pretty different, but 2 of them, for whatever odd reason, is under Rule 35, and it.
Right, that's kinda, I had.
So I know you don't wanna-
a star next to this one. like,
How about we
wait, what?
delete a rule? Then we don't change the number, and you can delete.
Alright, let's keep going. Alright, so we're all good with the 36, right? That work?
Yeah.
Alright. 37, there's no change. 38 is roll call votes.
So the changes here are, they're really housekeeping in nature, and what I've done is to make it more clear that here are the rules, here's where you are required to do a roll call vote, and here's where you can do a roll call vote. And make it, just more legible and clear to read.
Alright, any comments on that?
So, but we're adding a mandatory roll call vote for all disapproved bills on 3rd reading.
I think that's already in here,
Yeah,
it
that's
just
just
got moved
moved.
up.
Yeah,
Oh, I
that was
see.
its
That's
own
why
paragraph at the
when you
end.
read Rule
Oh.
38, it's like you're doing the shalls, and then you get the mays,
I see,
and then
it's
there's a
struck
shall
through.
down here and another may, so it's just
Yeah.
structurally trying to make it more
Gotcha.
clear and straightforward.
Got it.
Alright, anything else? Okay, 39 is special rules on consideration of operating budget ordinance, there's nothing there. Number 40 is consent agenda.
So,
Yes.
the changes here, it's to recognize that we do consent agendas for 2nd and 3rd reading as well, and not just for resolutions. I think one of the larger changes is that the vice mayor will not be required to read all the captions, and will just read the legislative numbers.
Amen to that.
Oh, thank you.
And we are having, and this is just on the logistical side, we have had discussions with the clerk's office about what the Legistar system allows and what it does. And so, hopefully we can do this in such a way that when the number is read, the caption can appear on the screen. So you have to,
Yeah.
she doesn't have to
I'll
read
have
the
to-
caption.
But I should read the numbers very slowly
slower.
for ample time to have visual acknowledgement of
Good
what the
idea.
caption is on the board.
Yeah, and we still have to go through testing for that, just to make sure, but that's one thing that we've had conversation with the clerk's
And
office
if we
about
can't
it.
do that, can we still do this?
Yes.
Okay.
We will have to add some language to the agenda to make sure that the public is on notice that we're doing this. And, then there's also, and this is another thing that we're still kind of working out a little bit with the clerk's office, and that is having one large consent agenda at the beginning of when we get to consent, that's separate from resolutions and all the readings, so that, we can take all resolutions, 1st reading, 2nd reading, and 3rd reading, consent items, all at the same time. So we don't do a consent reading at the beginning of
Please.
every section.
Oh, I like it.
Who do I need to call to make this happen?
We,
Call yourself.
we have heard this, we understand this, and
Oh
so
my
we're
God.
trying to make this happen.
Yeah, I
But
just-
as it stands for rules right now, this is just to acknowledge that 2nd reading, 3rd reading will also be on consent, that we do that, and then that we only have to read the identifying numbers and not the captions.
We might get out in 30 minutes, y'all.
Don't jinx us.
Oh, yeah.
Vice Mayor, question.
Save 30 minutes.
No, I was just gonna make, the point that, Margaret was sharing, that, when we do have members of the community that are waiting around till 3rd, and then something winds up being on consent anyway, that's really a burden on the community, so there is a benefit to our citizens in if we can be very deliberate and clear. And I think, from planning commission, I know, right, like the way they kind of convey the, consent agenda, I think we're gonna have to be very intentional in how we notice and explain it.
Yes.
And kind of narrate it, because if it were to be such a big change, it could be confusing. You don't want people not to understand, so, I am all about it, and I just think we want to be very intentional in our print and explanation and however I speak it into the room, because I just don't want citizens feeling like, wait, is it consent? And I'm confused, and that's not a good feeling as a citizen. I think it has well more benefit to them. It's just about how we communicate it.
Councilmember Johnston.
I don't know if I should wait until we talk about deferrals, if that would be, but it's sort of a Planning Commission does this as well. They will list out all their consent, but then they also list out everything that's planning on being deferred, and they get that out of the way in the beginning of the meeting. So is that something that we should consider as well, to have our consent agenda resolutions first, second, third, second, third, and then any item that was to be deferred, like, is that possible to do that as well? Because it just, again, to your point, the community is coming, waiting for whatever, and it's like, are you serious? I sat here for 2 hours and it's deferred?
Sorry.
No, I was just gonna say, I, with some of the resolutions and ordinances, we don't necessarily know that it will be deferred until it comes out of committee.
Right. Well, if it's deferred by rule, it 100% is going to be deferred. And I'm not saying something being deferred on the floor after whatever, but there's some reasons, especially like zoning, where it's like, well, we got a few things to work out. I know I'm gonna be deferring this. There's a lot of pieces of legislation that the sponsor knows they're gonna be deferring for whatever reason. So I just feel like those, instead of waiting around, we can list off and say.
Some of the ones that coming off of consent are the ones that need to be deferred a lot of times. So if you could,
Yeah,
package them,
instead
it
of,
would make
yeah.
sense.
Director Darby.
So I don't think that we can, we've been thinking about how would we do a consent agenda for deferrals, and I don't think that it makes sense to do that, but maybe if we know in advance that items are going to, like planning items are gonna be deferred, then maybe we can have a list and we can read that just to give notice at the beginning of the meeting that something is gonna be deferred, so that people can leave, but then we take up that deferral later. Because deferrals are often not for just one meeting. It
Right.
might be for, till the next, it
Could
might
be
be
for
for
3
one meeting,
months.
but it might be 3 months, it
Yeah.
might be the next planning,
Yep.
the next public hearing, that sort of thing. There's too many different variables.
How does the planning commission do it? Because they don't go through all that. They just say this is gonna be deferred. And I guess it's on the agenda, well, is it on the agenda where they say it's deferred?
They do
I
it
think
at
it
their
is.
meeting.
We can
Yeah,
talk
I've
to
got
them.
a
I think
note
that
to
they've
look at
got,
that.
yeah, I think they've got a larger lead time part of the way too, and they've also got, I think everything has to be noticed, so they know like, oh, if this wasn't properly noticed, it's 100% getting
Yeah.
deferred. So,
Yeah.
we have that on public hearing nights, but it's not all the deferrals, and in fact, it's probably not even most of the deferrals.
Okay, let's come back to the deferrals,
Yeah.
on consent, when you all have an answer. My question is for the vice mayor, what will the pro tem do?
If the pro tem doesn't have a big, long list
Yes.
of things to read, I just don't think that's fair to the pro tem or myself either. I wouldn't presume to put that on their plate, but,
We could just have them read it in the hallway. All right, we're good on that one. Let's move on to 41. It is consider updates for clarity. I don't think we need to discuss that one. Number 42 is charter amendments. This is housekeeping.
Wait, can we go back to substitutes real quick?
Yes.
So last term, and actually you and I got caught in this, and I thought it was worthy of a discussion. Is it worthy of a rule change? I don't know. But it had always, just because, since in my term anyway, if, I wanna call you Tom, if Councilman Druffel had a bill that I substituted, it always came back to, okay, Council Lady Johnston, we're now on your bill because I substituted it. Sometimes it's friendly, sometimes it's not, hopefully, usually it is. There was a situation where there was a bill that I substituted, she was actually cool with it, but I was planning on deferring it because I felt like it needed deferral, and I knew I would have gotten a deferral. But the vice mayor didn't want it to be deferred because, whatever. So instead, he goes back to her that says, move to approve. Wait a minute. wait a minute, I thought it was my bill. So you can't have it both ways. It either is, when it's substituted, it goes to the sponsor of the substitute or not, but you can't pick and choose based off of what you want, vice mayor or whoever's running the meeting, right? That to me is, I hate saying not fair, but whatever's more intelligent to say, that's not fair. So, do we need to discuss that on, like, because there's nothing in Robert's rules that addresses it at all?
No.
So an amendment obviously doesn't change, but a substitute is typically more substantive to where it is something that it sort of is my bill now because I substituted it. And the other thing is, if it's an unfriendly substitute, but it stays with Tom, then Tom can go, withdraw.
Yeah.
Which at that point, it's like, well, wait a minute, because my substitute passed, we wanted that substitute, but he doesn't like it, so he's gonna withdraw. Well, now that's just legislatively not the most responsible thing to do, so.
I think it needs to stay with the second, the person that substituted it, because it becomes their bill now, right?
But we have to make a rule for that, cause
Yeah.
that's, yeah.
Agree. I do think we need a rule on that as somebody who has been in a similar situation. Yeah, you try for the substitute to be friendly, but if you are successful in moving that substitute, even if it's not friendly, exactly to your point, I mean,
think that occurred
you
a
have
few times.
substituted the bill, you've not
That's what-
amended
yeah.
it.
I think.
Yeah, and at the time, she was like, what happened? You know?
I had no idea.
She was walking up because she assumed it was gonna come to me because she knew the substitute was gonna pass. And then it goes to her, they were like, come back here. She's like, move to approve. I'm like, oh, anger. So, yeah, so then I guess I need to make a motion to add to the rule that whoever this is the sponsor of the substitute that passes, they become the primary sponsor, and you can always yield it, I can always yield it back to the person if it's friendly, that's fine, but I think the default should go to the author or lead sponsor of the substitute.
I agree,
I like that.
does everyone?
We'll get some language
So,
put together.
one question I have is, how would you like sponsorship to be, so I would think that this would mean, basically, you substituted, you didn't have any co-sponsors on your substitute, you become the only sponsor now.
Yeah, they would have to
Unless
sign
you
on
sign
to
on.
it,
Yep.
they would have to sign on to it
And
again.
you could agree to, that you become lead sponsor again or something, but otherwise, you're the only person, that's,
Yeah.
okay.
Well, what I would say though is sometimes your substitute does have co-sponsors,
Right.
so
Yeah.
I substituted an STR related bill at the last meeting of the first term, and I had co-sponsors on that
We might
somewhere.
So bringing on
we
the
changed that rule.
co-sponsors from the substitute over, and I guess just
We
like,
might, we
Is it
maybe
not in
should,
41?
okay, is it in 41? I was gonna say,
I know
But
what you're talking about.
also, if I
I was thinking
may,
it might be under,
belatedly, Chair,
sponsorship.
I had, if I didn't call it the Henderson rule, but when I was working on the sidewalk legislation, we substituted that 3 times. They were pretty significant substitutes. I had 37 co-sponsors by the time I got to my third
Yeah.
substitute. And I was sort of narrating along the
We'll
way,
move it
giving a
over,
one
yeah.
sheet, these are the changes that have been made, and kind of carrying everybody along. But between my first and my second substitute, when I only had 20 some odd sponsors, and folks did want to be on in a very particular order, like they really cared about sidewalks, they wanted to be near the front of that. And so I had to spend a lot of time making sure staff was getting everybody signed back on to the substitute in the same order. And so, as I had understood it, I thought we had formalized into the rules, but basically, if it is the substitute of the lead sponsor, then, everybody gets signed back on in the same order.
It's
But
Rule
is that not-
9.
It's in there.
So
Okay.
we're gonna move that
We're
to
gonna move
41.
Okay, thank you, to 41.
Yeah.
I missed
Wait,
that
so-
in the last meeting, I apologize.
So if I have a bill and I substitute my own bill and I say I've got 25 sponsors on that first bill and I substitute it,
They all get signed back on in that same
Now.
order.
what if I don't want to?
Well, they
What if
can-
I'm like,
If
I
you're a
don't like this
co-sponsor,
substitute?
you can request to be removed as a sponsor.
I guess, okay.
alright, are we clear on that one?
Yeah,
Okay.
I apologize, I think it should be in
Where are we
41,
now?
I missed that
We are
first.
moving on to 41.
It makes sense to move,
All right,
especially
Where's
with this
40?
change.
Oh, there's 40. It's the top. Sorry. Well, it's on the bottom and then, anyway.
All right, 41, amendments to legislation and substitute legislation.
That's what we were on, right?
We were finishing up 40.
41.
No, that, we were just on 41.
We were on
Ah.
41. Because we were talking about
I'm
substitutes,
off.
remember?
Yeah.
Okay,
Who's on first?
42, charter amendments.
Housekeeping.
Okay, 43, deferrals.
So,
Oof.
do you wanna go there? So we talked about Rule 43 at the last meeting, and so we've incorporated those changes, and I have supplied you, so you can have, in front of you, you have the red line version, and there's also a clean version, at your desk too.
This is good thick paper. This is good thick paper.
Thick?
I feel like it's regular paper.
I do too.
Oh,
Boston printer.
I've got it here.
well, then I'm not printing anything off from my printer for you people, because my paper doesn't feel this thick.
Anyway, there's so much redlining that it might be easier for you to read it clean, but you might also, you've got both in front of you to look at.
If it's blue and marked out, what does that mean?
That means it's a deletion,
It's a
so
deletion.
basically the upon third deferral is just a rewrite of the above paragraph.
Okay.
And we discussed this one at the last meeting. There's no changes from the last one.
No, it's if it's an indefinite deferral for any reason, it's 60-day minimum. And, then when you put it back on the agenda after those 60 days, there's an automatic one meeting deferral and re-referral to committee.
Okay, all right, yes.
I have something on the fourth paragraph. I just think it's still, I like the changes. I think that fourth paragraph is still clunky, and I think it comes, I tried to put it into 2 sentences, but to me, the clunky thing is that phrase in the second line, upon being placed back on the agenda, is out of place. The subject verb in this is any ordinance or resolution shall be deferred, and I think that upon being placed back on the agenda needs to be closer to both of those things. So how about, does this hurt it or help it? Any ordinance or resolution that has been deferred for 60 days or longer, upon being placed back on the agenda, shall be deferred for one meeting without
Yes.
debate.
That's great.
I'm gonna have you proofread all of my stuff.
I know, right?
There's a reason Tony Cash is on this committee,
Exactly.
colleagues.
Second paragraph, days are countable, so I think that should be fewer than 60 days.
Where was it?
That's
Second-
second paragraph.
Second paragraph,
Yes.
second
Yes.
line.
Oh, no fewer than, yeah.
Okay, anything else, council member? All right, anything else on 43? All right, 44, there is no changes. 35 is decorum. That does have changes, Director Darby.
Yeah, so these are proposed modifications. Some of them are a little bit housekeeping, so electronic nicotine delivery system, just go ahead and call it a vape. And then the two-way voice or two-way video, just go ahead and call those phone calls or video calls, because that's
That's what it
typically
is.
what it is. Prohibited in the chamber during council meetings. There was a discussion about small snacks being prohibited. That modification is not redlined in your copy. But discussion had been had on that before. And then the addition of the signage sentence at the end is in an effort to kind of allow signs, but make it clear that there is room for removal of your sign if it's obstructing the view. So it is very, it's a content neutral rule. We're not gonna get in any sort of constitutional trouble for, if we have to have signs removed, it's because it's too large and it's blocking the view of other people as opposed to what
You
the
mean
content
in the
is.
council?
In the gallery.
In the gallery.
Okay, I see.
All right, Councilmember Johnston.
Yeah, so is this decorum in the gallery or in the chamber? Or both?
The chamber would be the whole room.
Okay, so, cause we had a whole committee that met several times and I was on it about council member decorum, from which we have done nothing. So I don't know, I just feel like it should be separated out. We should be conducting ourselves in a certain way, and our guests should be conducting themselves in a certain way. And this doesn't go far enough.
What do you mean?
Well, when we have large groups of people and they leave and there's trash all over the place because they brought in food, like I agree with getting rid of a water bottle, I get it. But bringing in snacks and like coming in with your dinner, like, I mean, we can't do that, and we're there.
I've never seen dinner. I've seen snacks.
Yeah, but I'm saying the remnants of their snacks. Like this just isn't a place. Like it's not the place for that. I also think people blurting things out. I mean, vice mayor can do that, but you
may blurt things out.
She can blurt. No, I'm saying people in the chamber, when they get rowdy and are clapping and hooping and hollering and yelling out and all this kind of stuff like that, that's not conducive to positive legislative procedure. So, and I'm not talking about, free speech and all that. There's times to address us, there's times not, but, things got out of hand many times last term, and it's not fair to the other people that are there, that are behaving themselves, that are wanting to be a part of the process but feel intimidated, feel whatever, because that came back to me multiple times, that people just said, that was a circus and I will never come back. And I was so appalled and embarrassed, but also frightened and intimidated by other people that were there. That's not right. That's not right. We shouldn't be bouncing basketballs in our gallery. Like, that was ridiculous. And yes, I'm calling someone specifically out, but I mean, there's just ways to conduct yourself and ways to not conduct yourself, and clearly we need to put this in the rules and put it on the walls, because people don't get it.
I disagree with the food.
Okay.
Right? We are able to eat snacks in, not in the gallery ourselves. We're there for hours. A lot of the people that come to these meetings are there for hours as well, and I don't want to restrict them from eating or drinking. I think snacks, similar to what we have, right? We're not allowed to eat on the floor. I haven't really seen anybody eat on the floor. I've seen them order pizza and eat it outside in the lobby area. I have seen that. I think we do need to add trash cans to help out with the trash, and we could definitely put signs back there to say, please pick up after yourself. I do think that we should do that. I don't feel comfortable asking the public that is taking time off and probably not having dinner or anything from eating snacks.
So then leaving it consumption of food beyond small stacks.
Beyond stacks.
Stacks.
Yes, beyond stacks of
Stacks
food.
of
Beyond
snacks.
small stacks of snacks. You can have small stacks of snacks. So consumption of food beyond small snacks shall be prohibited. I'm fine with that, but I do think we need to help. That's ridiculous. We have council staff having to pick up, that's ridiculous.
Yeah, we should definitely have trash cans back there.
But I do think we need to really contemplate some things to make it fair and comfortable for everyone to be able to participate that wants to.
I think the sign, right, not prohibiting or not obstructing somebody's view is great, because I would have to go back there because security would take their signs, but they're allowed to have signs. Then I would have to go get the signs from security, and it would be a back and forth. And we have that already in place, and right, for the security downstairs to have and to know what the procedure is, and we don't have to go through it every time.
For signs, yeah. I don't know how you have a sign that doesn't block unless it's right here next to you.
Well, it has
If
to
you
be
hold-
effectively like this. It's like
Right.
the size of your
Yeah.
body. You
Right.
can't be holding something,
Uh,
even something small could obstruct somebody.
Yeah.
So I think that's the point. It's more what the sign might create for
Right.
other citizens, not
Sure.
particular size, we're not gonna get into like your
Yeah.
sign can only be
Yeah.
this big.
Yeah, no.
Not what it says. It's about
Mm-hmm.
the action in like imposing on other citizens because
Yeah.
they can't
And
see.
also, like I had mentioned,
Or distracted.
to Hannah and Director Darby, people would bring big signs, right, when talking about, rezoning as an example, and then bring those down, so we didn't also wanna go into detail.
Right, it's
as
an
to-
illustration at the point that they're speaking to something, yeah, so you don't like, right, because then security be like, that's too big, and it's
Yeah.
like, well, actually, it's not for me to hold, it's for me to present with, yeah.
And I would suggest the noise or the sound back there sometimes, it's like one or two, but when all of a sudden it gets there, and I'm in the back, so sometimes I can't hear because, someone's starting to talk and all of a sudden someone's clapping or doing, and you want sort of like the enthusiasm to some degree, but it really does disrupt. So I don't know if you put
Well-
rules, but at what point do you do that, and then the other people that might be opposed are there, the intimidation.
Well, it's the same thing, right, if we're gonna talk about volume, then we're gonna talk about volume for council as well, when we're talking during announcements and we have a whole presentation going on in the back.
Right, that's right.
Right, I think we have to look at this as a whole, I don't think. I'm hesitant to. I mean, what I would wanna see is, what other places do, maybe as a suggestion,
So,
or have a special
if we're
meeting on that
talking about
specifically.
just like, are we talking about like regulations for people in the room, like noise level? So, the thing is like, and there's a lot of case law on this, it's a pretty high bar to remove somebody from the room. You can shush them, you can ask them to be quiet, if they continue, if it's like one person shouting and you can't continue with the meeting because this guy is being so disruptive, you can kick that person out. But it needs to kinda happen for a while, it needs to actually be disruptive to the meeting.
I would rather leave that up to the vice mayor to decide.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah, and
so,
I-
yeah.
I do appreciate, as a, again, former member on the back row, it is difficult maybe just to kind of understand from the dais, like so I would just welcome members if you're having a problem hearing because of the low, but I hope, I will be able to ascertain and just a one bang and,
We'll keep it at
please
that.
more quiet in the gallery, right? It's not directed at anybody in particular, it's just kind of like bring the level down. But, you're welcome to let me know if you're having difficulty hearing and it's not something that I have addressed. Please don't hesitate to, just kind of come up sidebar or something, but, I will do my best to make sure that everybody can hear well and participate.
It's a little subjective too, and so
It is.
once, but then it keeps going, and then it
Yeah.
keeps getting louder, and then
Yeah.
you start to go, it does
Right.
feel a little,
And one more thing on that is it should always be applied to
Absolutely.
everyone equally.
Understood. Right.
Yeah,
In the gallery
Yes.
generally, not to,
Yes.
right.
So I do like these proposed modifications prohibiting phone calls, video calls, and signs that obstruct others' view. Should we add with these signs, if we're gonna address signs, should we specifically say that they should not have vulgar or obscene content? You can't say that.
content neutral,
Yeah.
Right.
cause what's vulgar, what's obscene?
The
The process of deciding is a free speech issue.
Yeah, it's,
Vice Mayor?
I'd absolutely appreciate the concern. I will say to the body, like, you should not be using profanity, right, as leaders and members of the body. I recall having folks from my district with some young scouts, and somebody spoke at a public hearing and spoke in a very, not just profane, but like racially kind of, like really offensive speech. And I remember thinking, good night, I've got young people here, right? So, it will happen, but, it just,
Is that something that could be to the vice mayor's discretion of if somebody walked in with a sign that says F all of you?
The vice mayor could say, hey, please don't bring in vulgar signs, but if somebody is holding it up, she cannot have it removed.
Yeah.
All right,
yeah, no, I understand,
all right, moving on from decorum.
Oh, the law.
Yes,
Yeah.
I know, it's,
Okay,
I
but-
know, it's.
Do we need to vote on,
tough.
are we gonna add these in the commented box to add those?
Add what?
Adding the proposed modification of the prohibiting phone calls, video calls, signs that obstruct.
That's
It's
in
in
there.
It's in the red line portion.
No, it's not. It says any signs brought into the council chamber shall not be held, but it doesn't say anything about prohibiting phone calls or video calls.
It's up
It's
in
up
the first paragraph.
In blue.
This is confusing.
Well, this one, I think,
It's in
If we've got
blue.
the
I
right
see it
one.
now, okay.
Alright,
yeah,
are we good?
good.
Alright, 46 is no meetings on election day, that's housekeeping. And then the new added one, that will be under 46 is no meetings on the first Tuesday of January, that was suggested by the, executive committee. Council member?
What if the first Tuesday of January is the 7th? That's really not a big deal.
Doesn't matter. I think, personally, I just think from oh, I apologize, Chair.
Go for it, Vice Mayor.
I'm just answering your question. I'm like, working group, committee style, what are we doing here? That was, discussed, and we thought that the continuity and clarity of just saying the first meeting in January is actually the second Tuesday is more clear. It's clear for the planning department, it's clear for the development community, everybody can start to plan around it. It will invariably be, second, third, fourth, like, if you could imagine every year trying to make the discretion of like, well, that's too close to New Year's, or that's too close to the holidays, or whatever, like, I would propose, and I did to the executive committee, and they voted unanimously to support that, just taking that first meeting of January out.
So we lose a meeting.
Correct.
Well, we only get 1 month off every 4 years.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not
They
complaining
really
about
do,
that,
but
I'm just,
I
I mean, like, I get it if the first Tuesday of January is
It's also
January the
helpful-
2nd, which is what it is, I think, in 2024, which that's brutal.
yeah, that's.
But if it's this,
I think it also helps the staff.
Right, I mean, if you can imagine, legislative filing deadlines happening like right around, the holidays,
Well done.
and, I would just assert as a
I
body.
think it's great,
Yeah.
because
Okay.
otherwise you don't have a holiday, you really,
Okay.
It makes the first, meeting in January be the the third Tuesday, but we would still have public hearings, so it doesn't get rid of the zoning public hearings for the month of January, it's not like we're
Just
taking a
get
break.
shifted.
It just
okay,
gets
I
shifted.
would say to change to that second sentence, the third Tuesday of the month of January shall be considered the first meeting. You might wanna put in there that it's the only, it's, procedurally, it will be, but to me, this isn't clear, it's like, well, so, that's why I said, so we just lose a whole meeting, answer is yes. So to add some language in there that makes it very clear that the third Tuesday of January will be handled like the first meeting, but it's the only meeting in January, does that make sense?
Well, the
Well-
first sentence says that there's no meeting. So the charter says that we can only have our regular meetings on the first Tuesday and the third Tuesday. So we can't have another regular meeting of the month. It would be a special meeting of the month if we set another date. So for the second sentence here is intended to mean that for the purposes of the rules, because there is another place in the rules that talks about public hearings on the first meeting of the month, the first, and so this would make it very clear that even though we're not having 2 regular meetings in the month of January, that the one meeting that we are having shall be considered that first meeting for the rules purposes.
We could say, and shall be the only regular meeting in January, something like that, maybe.
Yeah, that's
The
what I
thing, the
think.
thing is you also wouldn't wanna say the only meeting, cause what if you have to call a special meeting for
Right.
some reason?
yeah.
I do think it would be helpful, just because when you have a rule and it's like, well, but in 2 other rules, it refers to da-da-da-da, it's like, just make it clear in this rule that it's the only meeting, the only regularly scheduled. The other thing is, so you're gonna have a public comment on the third Tuesday, then you're gonna turn around in February and have another public comment. How does that work? Not public comment,
Public
public
hearing, but
hearing.
yeah, same thing, yeah,
All right,
similar thing.
I mean, okay.
let's keep going. 40,
I just have a real quick question. It's less about the rule. So this, the meetings on, no meetings on election day, does that includes a presidential like, next year we're having a presidential primary in March, first Tuesday, so will we have a meeting? Since we're losing a meeting in January, will we move the meeting, first meeting in March? Do we
So-
know?
Those have traditionally been moved to the Thursday, but it's at the discretion.
Okay, that's all I wanted.
all right, 47 is adjournment, there's no change there. 48 is election and recall, we're in a new section, election of members of council commissions. This is housekeeping. 49, election of public officials. It looks like
That's
housekeeping. Number 50 is election of boards and commissions. There's a change here. Wait, 40, 50. And it's to send letters to the executive director of each board and commission.
When the council is gonna be, pursuant to the new ordinance that has us, electing people to boards and commissions, you should be noticing the executive director. That was an issue for a prior one. And then down in sub 3, this is just during elections, this is just a constant, issue to, interpret this particular provision. Probably needs a little clarification.
Yeah, and I think the intent is the top recipient of votes, because there are some that are 21 and there's some are not. And there's some people who will get 30 votes or 40 votes. And/or others receiving 21 or more votes.
You want to say at least 21 or more votes, or in order, I don't know. Is receiving, other nominees receiving 21 or more votes here? I guess that's not really true.
I think that you could say something like each vacancy will be filled by the recipient with the nominee with the requisite number of votes, beginning with the individual receiving the most votes or
So it's
something.
like ranked,
I mean,
ranked choice? Is that
well,
what
no, not changing the voting style, it's just clarifying this one sentence.
Okay.
So what this sets up is like you could elect 3 people in one vote. And so if somebody gets, 38 votes, that person gets elected. If somebody gets 32 votes, that person gets elected. If somebody gets 19 votes, maybe that person isn't elected, but, you've got the top recipient of votes is getting elected.
Yep.
But, it's just weird, it's weirdly stated, and I think that it leads to some questions if you were to sit down and read it, because the top recipient of votes might have 18. And they would need 21
Okay.
for some of them,
Yeah.
but some of them, 18 would elect them.
Yeah.
But it's usually 21.
It's usually 21,
More
but
likely
there's a
21.
couple that are not.
All right, Vice Mayor.
And I think that's what this is meant to capture, but it doesn't do it great.
And you may have already said it, but it's in the top recipient of the requisite number
Yeah.
of votes?
Yeah, just something
Yeah.
simple like that.
Yeah,
Okay.
that makes
Yeah,
sense.
because everybody has to get 21 votes, right?
Yeah.
Well, not everybody,
Not
there's a
everybody
couple
really.
that don't, but most of them do.
Okay.
Like, I'm pretty sure, I think IDB, I think it just says is elected by
I think that
the
covers it.
council. I think
We'll
that,
find out. So,
I don't think that's 21 votes.
yeah, I just think that's a catch-all, the requisite.
Yeah.
Yeah, it does.
Councilmember Cash.
I think we may have just covered it, but I was just gonna suggest,
Would it
if
follow
we're worried that the
because
A
it's after-
doesn't specifically say 21, just
Yeah, we
put
would
the
get rid of
21 before the A,
We might
so it
just say-
applies to both. And the other thing I think is clunky about this sentence is that in order of total vote count. I wonder if there's a way to phrase that a little better.
Okay.
But I don't know what it is.
So can y'all take that and,
Yeah.
Play around with
We'll-
it.
we'll mess
We'll
with it.
bring it
all
back.
right, have fun. 51 is recall, that's housekeeping. 52 is council travel expense, no changes there. 53 is adoption of rules and procedures, that is housekeeping. 54 is suspension of the rules, that is housekeeping. 55 is, Robert's rules, and that is housekeeping.
See, Margaret has a lot to say about this one.
You do?
I just want the proper name of
I'm
the.
just teasing.
Alright,
To be.
so there were some things that we left unfinished, mainly the CIB. And what we were gonna put in that, we did say that for council members, we just, rank them as priority and not delete any item, but we didn't discuss the at-large members and how they would give priority or any of the style. We could do them the same, right, where they have their own list and then they rank it, but they take from a lot of our list, so I don't know if there's any suggestions on that.
So right now, the rule just says, we're gonna have a joint meeting to prioritize CIB request. And so if we do something, if we don't use the point system, and we just do, like, you guys rank your list of stuff, what's gonna happen is then, everybody's got a top 1, 2, 3. And so then it's kind of like there's no master ranking across all of the council CIB projects. It's just in your district, it's ranked 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 10. You're 1 through something, and so that doesn't necessarily. I think the purpose of doing the priority list is to provide something to the mayor's office, showing, hey, the council has gone through and looked at all of the all of the council CIB projects and is presenting you with what the council as a body has prioritized, not which each district has prioritized.
What?
That's the way I think that's the way it is right now. If we want it to be what each district has prioritized and that's the information that's relayed to the mayor's office when they are preparing the CSP, then that's, at your discretion.
We'll go Johnston, then Cash, then Joe.
So to me, when I'm looking at my CIB and I've got 100, let's say we stick with these points, and I've got 100 points, and I go, okay, well, I want 40 points to go here, and then I want 30 points to go here, and then I want 15 points. That's still 1, 2, 3, 4. I mean, like, what?
Well,
There's no difference in that.
Well,
And because I'm not looking at his CIB, I'm not looking at his CIB or her CIB, I'm looking at my CIB. So even whether you go with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, however long you want to go, or 100 points and allocate your points, like whatever, you're still not getting from a district projects as a whole. It's still going to the mayor's office as, okay, these are Johnston's priorities, these are Cash's priorities, these are Sepulveda's priorities in their district. So that doesn't change anything. The at-large, so that's why I think it's a heck of a lot easier just to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 from a district perspective. The at-larges, I think the at-larges should look at county-wide things. They're certainly gonna be in somebody's district. Like, let's say you you did want a park. So that's a kind of a bigger deal than just so that I would think would be on the list of at-larges to be able to look and prioritize those types of things. That's where I think they come in, and if they wanna do 100 points or rank it or whatever, but I just don't know how you get away. To me, it's the same thing, but the points are stupid.
okay.
Sorry.
I'll let Director Darby go to.
Going back to the points, and I promise you, I'm not trying to sway you one way or the other, but going back to the points, since this prioritization process was put into place, I think it was like 8 years ago, we've used the points every year except for 2 years. The points, to your point about just ranking, like you're gonna have 10 points here for 5 points here for this and whatever, another council member could put 100 points on their project. So you could have put 100 points on your park. Well, when all of those projects are put into one document and you have a point ranking, the park's got 100 points, your projects have 10 points. So you're gonna be, all of your projects will be further down on that list compared to other council members who have said, yeah, all of my projects in my districts are important, but the things that I wanna get done this year, I've gotta get this park done, so I'm putting 100 points on that park, and so it's gonna rise to the top of the list.
See, I don't like that at all.
Councilmember Cash.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think you just, explained, as you just explained, I think we're gonna have different philosophies of how to use the points, and, I just think ranking it's better, and, a lot of these things are gonna, not just, these projects aren't only going to be considered on our recommendation or lack thereof, if we're using small number of points, but, the departments are reviewing them, and the departments are gonna talk about prioritizing them. We know that for a lot of the transportation type stuff, walk and bike, getting it on walk and bike is actually a lot more important than getting on the CIB. But I don't like the points because we don't calibrate how we use the points, so we have 35 or 40 different ways of our philosophy of how we should use these points.
Councilmember Druffel.
I actually like the points, because I could help prioritize if I wanted, out of my 100 points, and I had something of highest importance, I would put 80 or 70, 80 points or something, and so I was allowed to prioritize at a different level. If I just put 1, 2, 3, 4, everybody's gonna have ones. But if I put 100 points and said, just like you suggested, absolutely, this is the most important sidewalk. If I get this, life is good. But if I put 1, 2, 3, 4, everybody's gonna have 1, 2, 3, 4, so you don't know how important it is to me relative. That's.
Vice Mayor.
So if I could just share for y'all, because I think you were first termers last term versus me 2 terms before, and kind of where we were and why this point system got implemented. The CIB used to be a meaningless wish list, and it was just full of all kinds of stuff. We've had a little bit, no disrespect, of a come apart because we kind of got on a good track with stuff, and then through a lot of just leadership churn and volatility, and we all kind of came apart on how we were doing things. But the intent was, as Councilman Druffel spoke to and as Margaret conveyed, and I know I personally have utilized it in district service when I've got a sidewalk that starts in one district and is in another, or you've got a park that serves the 3 adjacent districts. It is an opportunity for collaboration. It does create a much more distinction than 1, 2, 3, 4 does. I think as a council member, I was always in a position of like, I would not put something in the CIB unless I thought it had objective merit relative to the metrics of, say, the walk and bike strategic plan. But that's not, we had been in a place where, people call it like chicken in every pot, or, trying to get to a place where you weren't just saying, okay, every 35 district got one little thing, right? You were wanting to get to a place where you said, hey, council member, hey, council member, hey, council member, let's make sure all these people in our communities can walk to this bus shelter or this park. It just provides more collaboration instead of letting the administration check the box that we got you, like this little crosswalk and this little thing and this little whatever, to like check the district box rather than doing things that were, that was the intent.
I still don't get that though, because like her park that we touch, Nash and her touch, that park was not on my CIB. I didn't get to rank it. That park wasn't on Nash's CIB because it's in her district. We didn't get to rank it, you know what I mean? So
Do get to
can.
rank.
You can
I do
rank
think
it,
that you
though.
can rank them.
Yeah.
I think, so you
Well, I
get, so
should
like
too.
Provide
currently,
your points to any project.
currently you've got the spreadsheet about like what you're gonna put into the CIB for your district, and that is only district specific, but when you get to the prioritization, I think that it's
Yeah, there's
been
a different
like a
spreadsheet.
full spreadsheet of
I've
all
had
the
district
projects.
council members and at-large members put points in the part.
The second round, or whatever that is, you're allowed to go and do others and get everybody else's involved. There you go.
I think because we've done it different ways at different times and different years, it has been explained differently. I do need to go back and watch Mr. Claxton's presentation on CIB, which I did miss, but I think part of it is sort of explaining it better, and also sharing, hypothetically, you might want to, right, and kind of explaining it a little bit better, because I just felt like we kind of lost a hold of it somewhere in my second term, where I was like, we are sideways on all this. This is not working kind of how the intent was. And I don't know if that was for explanation or because of how departments were interpreting it, or multiple mayors or what. But I acknowledge that at this juncture, it doesn't feel like it's working right. But I do feel like we had a brief golden moment in my first term where we kind of got it right. So I can't necessarily articulate what that was, but I just think we need to kind of explain it better and the potential of it, of the 100-based scoring system.
Well, I was just gonna say, the information that's been shared thus far from Mr. Claxton has been about the initial phase, which is, here is this new app for you to use to input any new projects that you wanna input, and decide you wanna keep old projects or remove projects. We will have the second phase, which will be the prioritization phase. And he will give information based on the prioritization, but it's also gonna be some, in the past, because the rule right now says there's gonna be a meeting to prioritize. In the past, that system has been determined by I think the chair and the planning department about it, what the best way to prioritize and how to go about doing it, and these points, and I think one time it was, I don't even know what it was another time, but it has been different.
Yeah, there's been different ways of doing it, and yeah, like the 100 points, I think is maybe with the initial spirit of it, but I do think that over time that people have had different interpretations of what it should be.
Okay. So, yes, last word.
Yeah, sorry. I just, I don't know, I don't think we're doing it right. I think, what's in my district and what's in your district, like, we each represent our districts, and we talk to the people that are living in our districts, and we know what's important to the people in our districts. And if she has something that's what she wants, and she gives all 100 points to her thing, that shouldn't go above if I've got two really important things, and then mine each have 50, so the way that you explained it makes me hate the numbers even more. I also don't think it's fair to get political jockeying of like, hey, can I have some of your points? Can you help me over here? No. Look, your district is your district. Prioritize what's in your district. If you're an at-large person, you can have access to all those things. If it's a regional type thing like a park or a library or a community center or a whatever, then maybe that needs to be on a different part of the CIB that's like, this is sort of a regional impact kind of project that you can say, but having 100 points to be able to do this and that and whatever, it's like, we're making it stupid complicated, and at the end of the day, the mayor's office is going to do what he wants to do anyway. I mean, he's looking at it not probably very like, oh, well, this got 100 and whatever. I'm like, come on. So I just think keep it simple, stupid, but I don't like being able to give other people points. Like, no, prioritize your projects in your district. That's your job. I don't want your points. You don't get my points. Everybody keep your points. Or rank, or whatever it is. But when the mayor is looking at putting together the CSP, he should know what is important in each district, period. And then there's countywide things that are important, like the juvenile justice center, I get that. Then there's some more regional stuff that should be handled maybe a little bit differently, but we're creating more problems than there should be, and anyway, I hate the points.
Alright, we got
Gotta
no
go.
recommendation, cause
Okay.
that's gonna be split, so it stays until it doesn't. Alright, anything else that we need to discuss?
No.
Alright, so next steps, I guess, is getting this cleaned up and sent to the council for consideration.
Do we need to have another?
I think that what we need to do is, we need to do another turn, cause there was still some language that we have to work on. Maybe we bring that back to another special meeting. What I'd like to do is have us do another turn at that language, and then go through with a fine-tooth comb, doing some, editing to make sure that we have all the housekeeping changes that
I've
need
already
to be
found
changed.
a few sitting
I
here.
do too. I go through and I'm like, oh, we
I
missed that
know.
one, we missed that, so
Alright.
we need to do
Every single
that.
one.
So can we have that one in the chamber, and
We don't have to have a
push,
special meeting.
we have to have a special meeting, right?
Yeah, it'll need to be a special
have to,
meeting.
okay.
Yeah, And just so we can encourage the rest of the body to show
Yes,
up. And,
yes.
Good idea.
because we had a couple that showed up last time, and I know was a week later. So if we have it in like 2 weeks or,
What is 2 weeks from now? So
2 weeks from today might be that,
Really?
the
Is that the deadline?
16th.
So it's just right at
I
time.
think, yeah, I think
National League of
that's,
Cities.
yeah,
alright, let's figure out a date real quick and then we'll adjourn.
National League of Cities.
So it would have to be next week.
Well, it could be early, cause I think you guys leave on the 16th, right?
Is that a
Or
Wednesday?
does it start?
I think, well,
Oh,
some
leave on
people
the
are leaving
15th?
earlier, but the 15th, I think
The
is probably when.
13th or 14th?
Maybe 15th or 16th, I don't know when people are
I
leaving.
think I leave on the
Okay.
15th.
I think it might be the 15th, because it starts early on the 16th.
Okay, how about the 13th?
Okay.
Is that Monday or Tuesday?
That's a Monday.
I could do that.
Can you do 13th?
As
13 or
long,
14?
as long as I'm out of here by 6 o'clock.
Yeah, it's.
I think it'll be shorter.
I think it'll be shorter,
Because
because we're not
it'll
gonna, yeah, we're not gonna
Like
take
making
deep dives
sure
and
that,
everything.
it'll be like making sure that your edits are right.
But then if I'm encouraging colleagues to come who haven't come and they have changes,
Oh.
then it might go longer.
So that's why I'm wondering if we should have one quick one with just us to make sure that our recommendations are tightened up and everything is all pretty, and then submit it to the council.
Submit it to the council for.
I don't wanna, and then submit it to the council.
Because I'm, like, when I did this, when we were changing the committees,
November's
it
very
was,
tight.
it was better
Terrible
to just,
calendar.
instead of, okay, this is our draft, and then people come in and just like blows everything up, because there's people that haven't been paying attention at all, that are like, well, wait a minute.
Well, it's still gonna happen on the floor, that's what I'm trying to.
Right, but if
avoid.
it's buttoned up and tight and, I don't know, whatever.
Well, if I may, Vice Chair. So I think what I hear from staff is needing another turn for Ts crossed, Is dotted, that might be, I know we get in an awkward spot, but whether it's the Monday or Tuesday of the next council meeting, that if it's just sort of a housekeeping, are we good here? You could have a brief meeting, and then, Chair, to your point of not necessarily wanting to send everybody all this, and then, you know, it all gets kind of blown up on the floor, but there's an engagement time for the body. I kind of think about how, you know, we were working
To
on
test the
charter.
waters at the council meeting, during the committee meeting.
I guess what I'm saying is like having a shorter, small housekeeping one, but then to honor your desire to have more members participating in the committee itself, then that could be the one that's on the 13th, that you invite more members to attend. I apologize, I may not be understanding the spirit of what you wanted to do.
If it's just tightening up language with stuff that we've already agreed on, and they're going through and, you know, whatever.
That's why I said
It could, why couldn't we just tack it on to the end of the rules committee meeting on Tuesday?
That's what I think
that
the
what you're
vice mayor
saying?
just
Yeah.
said.
Right, I
Yeah,
just kind of
so
Monday,
let's do
Tuesday.
that,
Let's do that.
the
Put it
housekeeping.
at the end of the agenda.
Yeah, at the end of the agenda, if there is a desire from the rest of the body to have specific amendments, and we'll send this out in an email, then we can schedule it depending on what it looks like.
I think that sounds good.
Alright. Motion to adjourn.
7 o'clock.
Alright.
Yeah, 15 minutes to get there.
This has been a service of the Metro Nashville Network. If you would like to see this presentation again, or for more information on this and other programs, visit nashville.gov.